¿Cómo están? Soy Susana Moscatel y feliz de estar pudiendo traerles a ustedes, como siempre, estas entrevistas maravillosas. Esta en particular nos tiene muy emocionados, estas. Estamos hablando del elenco de la película Cielo, de medianoche, basado en una novela protagonizada, dirigida, producida por George Clooney, pero también ahí con nuestro querido Demian Bichir, también con la grandiosa Felicity Jones, David Oyelowo, Carl Chandler. Es una película acerca de qué pasa si tenemos que dejar al mundo, quién se queda y qué pasa, añoranza, dolor, pero también redención. Que ellos nos cuenten.
I'm very happy to see you, George. Thank you.
You doing okay?
I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Very good. We're all isolated and fine.
Yes, we are. And I think this movie couldn't come at a better time because of that same thing. You know, it's sort of a cautionary tale, is it? But it also feels like right now, in a certain way, what your character's going through.
Well, originally it was a cautionary tale about what we could do if we don't pay attention, what we're capable of doing to ourselves if we don't pay attention to hatred and anger and war and all the other things. And then as we finished the movie and we started into post-production, and we started to realize this is also a moment in the time about our inability to communicate and to connect and to be home and to be with people we love and to communicate with those people. That became a real overriding theme as we went through it. And we realized as time went on, we realized that this is actually who we are and where we are. And it felt unfortunately timely.
Yes, it doesn't feel futuristic at all, even though so many things are happening that seem to be science fiction. Yeah. But let me tell you this, when we heard that you were doing a movie about space, we said, oh, no, don't float away again. So when we heard that you were staying on Earth, we said, oh, good. But it's not quite that easy, is it?
The guys at the effects house put together a little film where Ether, the spacecraft that we have here, is floating through space, and all of a sudden it just passes me from gravity. I'm like, hey, wait, little help.
Funny. That must have been a lot of fun. But I mean, that's fun. But I mean, this character, he's so profoundly, alone and sad, but also with a mission. And he's very different from the director. So who informs who? Who's more powerful when it comes to those very intimate and emotional scenes?
The director always wins. The director is the chef. All the rest are ingredients. But I have to say, this was a character that I fully embraced the idea of. I like the stillness of it. I like the idea, I have people in my life who are older, who are filled with regret. And regret is a cancer. It's a toxin, and it makes getting older really miserable, and they can be really miserable people. Friends of mine, and their parents who are, elderly, and they're not happy about it. They can't enjoy it because they feel as if they're living an unfulfilled life. Regret's a killer, and this guy is living with such deep regret about his life that the idea was, and if you stop the movie before the last 5 minutes, it's a film about regret. And that's why we wanted it to be a film about redemption and that there is hope. And all the things that to me feel so important is that, this thing we're doing, this idea of living is worth the fight.
¿Alguien allá me copia? No recibimos nada.
El último contacto con centro de control fue hace
3 semanas.
¿Por qué hay tanto silencio?
Es una nave espacial que esperamos sea nuestro futuro. Debo advertirle sobre las condiciones en la Tierra. No conozco todos los detalles.
So good to see you two together. I mean, you make an amazing team on space. Let's begin, Demian. We just saw you on a wonderful movie. I hope you've seen it, Kyle. It's called Danica. We have it here right now playing. And it's one afternoon in the beach. And then suddenly you're off in space. So it's, how is this going for you? I mean, Mexico, you're back home, but then you go off on space. So what's home now?
Wow. Lo voy a decir en inglés por cariño y respeto con mi brother.
Sí.
First of all, I'm happy that you know, everyone loved Danica in Mexico. I will get you a link, Kyle. And I think, you know, this is funny because I shot that film right before entering into the Midnight Sky. I had this beard and longer hair and all that, and we were shooting that back in beautiful Altata, Sinaloa. And it was, as you say, you know, a beautiful afternoon at the beach, you know, a whole month over there. And then we moved all the way to London to shoot this right after. And then I got rid of the hair and the beard and all that, and went into a whole different climate, you know. So it was beautiful. It was just wonderful to experience these two types of ways of making a film.
Right.
You know, filmmaking is exactly the same animal, exactly the same monster, whatever, you know, the only thing that really changes is the budget to make it. So I went from probably the lowest budget film I've ever made in my life, which is Danica, into this, you know, super extra wonderful budget type of film. And I have to say, both experiences are about the same thing. It's about the human experience, you know, and everybody who made the film in Danica and everyone who made the film possible in the Midnight Sky were beautiful artists. And the main mood is set up by the director, like Michael Rowe and George Clooney.
Because both of your characters, I believe, at least in my feelings, represent the longing for home in a certain way. So what would home be for you, especially in times like these that are so complicated and we're all literally at home?
My home is my home with my family. My home is my place where I can go and people are safe, and my home is my place where I know I'm surrounded by my community, and they've got my back, I've got theirs, and everyone reaches out and tries to help one another, and everyone tries to do the best they can to take step by step through this horrible few months and try to make the best of it.
Ahí hay una antena más potente que la nuestra. Si llegamos a esa antena, los oirán.
Tiene el potencial de soportar vida.
Felicity, let me begin asking you this, because you've worked with Diego Luna in A Galaxy Far Beyond, and now you work with Demian Bichir also on space. So is there anything in particular you could tell us about Mexicans in space?
They're very cool. They're good at dealing with an imminent catastrophe. They keep a good sense of humor, a level head.
That's good to know. That's good to know, in case we get on the same spaceship as them. Yeah. David, we were talking a couple of weeks ago about the different in genres and about your range, about the things, I mean, both of you, but the things that you've done. And you have a movie about also a lot of sadness about what's a world that doesn't exist as you know it, but in Fantasyland. And now it's science fiction. And we've talked about history. So jumping from one to the other, it must be quite an experience. What's more important for you in this process?
Yeah, one of the gifts of being an actor is getting to take a look at humanity from lots of different angles. So whether it's a fantasy film in the guise of Come Away, or in The Midnight Sky now, a sci-fi movie, I think both films, are looking at who we are as people. So regardless of the genre, it's ultimately, I believe we go to the movies to see ourselves reflected to us. And the great thing about The Midnight Sky, in my opinion, is that I don't think there's anyone who's going to look at George's character and not be able to identify in some way with what he's going through, whether it's to do with family or to do with his attitude towards the environment, whether it's to do with regret, whether it's to do with illness. You know, these are all things that you live long enough, you're just going to experience either yourself or through the eyes of other people. And, you know, in the characters that myself and Felicity play, we also are indicative of humanity's striving and struggled for a better life, for, you know, procreation, you know, what are we going to do for the next generation? These are all things that, you know, are big questions for humanity. And I just love being in movies that ask those questions.
I believe science fiction has done that very well all through the years. But now, Felicity, for example, in this case, I also felt it was, maybe it's me, maybe it's my interpretation, but it's sort of a cautionary tale of where we're going with Earth and what we're doing with everything. Do you feel it has a little bit of that? And do you think science fiction has veered towards that?
Yeah, definitely. It's like we sort of put on the brakes just before we hit the car in front and we're kind of there. And then the film is what happens when you go all the way through and bash into the car. We never thought we'd come this close to a sort of a apocalyptic moment that we have done with this pandemic. But I think the film is an exploration of what happens when you go the whole hog, you know, when it is completely the end of the world and what one is left with. And I think it definitely forces us to ask questions of ourselves, you know, what is the point of us being here, and how do we live in a way that, you know, as David said, is going to make a world better for future generations. You know, in some ways we're over, you know, we're going to be gone. It's going to be the future generations that we have to think about, that there's going to be some earth for them to inherit.
Así que con eso en mente y sabiendo que siempre hay algo más, los dejamos por hoy. Gracias a todos por acompañarnos. No ha acabado este año, todavía tendremos grandes entrevistas. Así que aquí estamos. Cuídense mucho y hasta la próxima.